My advice is to take it one step at a time. All of this for me started with one informational interview, one message on LinkedIn, right? That was it. And then eventually it builds to a second message. It builds to a second conversation. It builds to maybe posting on LinkedIn yourself, right? Or meeting awesome people and having chats with them. So I think if it's important to you, which it should be, then you should find the time. And I hope that I can be testament to folks, not a cautionary tale, but I can demonstrate that you can do a lot during your PhD and you should prioritize your professional development.
Welcome to this new episode of Beyond the Thesis with Papa PhD. Today I have the great pleasure of having with me Ashley Moses. Ashley Moses is a PhD candidate in Neurosciences at Stanford University. She's also the founder of an incredible resource, and more, we'll talk about it, called PhD Paths, which shares the career paths of more than 100 PhDs who have transitioned from academia to industry jobs. Ashley is on a mission to help past, present, and future PhDs find fulfilling careers. And she's doing it very well, and I'm super happy to have you here today. Welcome to Beyond the Thesis, Ashley.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here and really look forward to talk about PhD paths.
Yes, and me too. It's really inspiring what you're doing as a PhD student. And again, there's more, and we'll talk about it than a website called PhD Paths. But first, let's go to the origin story. So, PhD candidate in neurosciences, what brought you here? And what was the path for you, the journey for you that brought you to the PhD? This kind of very long, very arduous experience where very often by the end you're left wondering, okay, what I do now. But let's go to the why you're doing what you're doing in terms of research and in terms of becoming a scientist and an academic.
Sure, absolutely. So I've been hooked on science from as long as I can remember. It actually started around first grade. I did this really cool science project with my mom for a science fair. And then from there, I was just like, oh my gosh, I need to be involved in this process, this way of thinking as much as I possibly can. I really enjoy how science helps you understand the world around you and find answers to really hard problems. It's a blast. It's a really cool job to have. And so, I mean, it would be kind of crazy to think from first grade, I just haven't stopped. But that's kind of just what happened. I just kept taking science classes and kept thinking about how awesome they were and kept really enjoying them. And then eventually in high school, I learned about neuroscience, where I was like very interested in brain, very interested in behavior, and found a field where you could do both. And then getting a PhD just felt like the next way for me to continue doing awesome science.
Mm-hmm. So curiosity, and I think it's a path for a lot of us. Some people also are attracted to professorship, and there's different paths into it. But curiosity and also kind of an aptitude to deal with scientific data, to understand the scientific method, or also sometimes it's curiosity about nature and how things work. And I think there's different amounts of them that meld together in each one of us, but it makes total sense. Now, PhD paths, we mentioned it in the beginning. So there's more than 100 PhDs now that have shared data information on their post-PhD professional journey there. How was that born? How does a PhD student start thinking about, I wish I could have kind of a map, or have kind of a globe, or a representation of what the job landscape looks like after you finish the degree?
Yeah, that's a great question. It came with a lot of existential crises. So I think that for anybody out there who's kind of struggling with their identity as an academic or trying to figure out what they can do with their PhD, I've been there. So many people have been there. You are definitely not alone. When I got into graduate school, which is something I've been working towards for 10 years of my life, I just stood there and was like, okay, I did it. And now what do I do? Right. What's another goal? And finding ways to celebrate the process, but also preparing myself for the next step. And so that led me to Googling way too many times, what can you do with a PhD? And there are some cool resources out there, but none of them really resonated with me. I wanted to know the exact path somebody took from my shoes as a PhD student to where they are now, right? Okay, you're a consultant. That's cool. What did you do when you graduated from grad school, right? Okay, cool. You're in policy. That's awesome. Did you do a fellowship? Did you do an internship? How many postdocs did you have to do to get to that position? Um, and so the project was born, right? PhD Paths is essentially me trying to understand everybody's path that they took and help as many people as possible find their own path, even though I must say there's no right path. There's just examples of everybody's path.
And there's very rarely similar or identical paths. It's interesting. It feels to me like you found, you didn't want just a map, you wanted detail on the territory. And that's what I think you're trying to get at by like having people fill in, those informations and kind of, in a more granular way, share what were turning points, what were maybe obstacles. It's super, super interesting. Can you share maybe something about what are the main questions that you ask of people who get on the database, and maybe also if you've seen, if there's like, how can I say, some insight that you've had that was surprising based on what these now over 100 people have put in there?
Absolutely. So, just a little bit of extra information on PhD Pass. So, PhD Pass has a few different components. So, the first component is a directory. This is everybody's name, everybody's location, everybody's job, and how they found that job. It's just a Google sheet of all the information compiled. Something that's really cool about that Google sheet is people indicate if they're willing to talk to you or not. And I'm very happy to say that like 98% of the people who have been a part of PhD Pass are willing to meet with students to tell them about their career. And so not only is this a great resource for you to just see what's possible, from people who have gotten maybe the same PhD as you, like there are plenty of neuroscience folks on there that have inspired me, but also you can reach out to them. So it's a great networking tool as well. So we have the directory. The next that we have is 100+ informational interviews that I have had with all of these PhDs. So it has so much information, which I'll explain in a second, to answer your question. And then the last is a newsletter. So you can get these interviews with a little bit more insights and actionable guidance in your newsletter in your inbox for free. So those are the three folds of PhD Paths. The coolest thing that I have gotten from this is in the interviews. And those questions have been, what do you do? What's your favorite part of your job? Also, why did you decide to leave academia? And do you have any advice? So the advice section is crazy. So many awesome pieces of advice so many gold nuggets. The part that I have found to be very heartwarming for myself is the explanation of why they've left academia, especially the discussion around folks not being alone. I think when you decide you want to go into a non-academic career, there's a lot of conversation around it being an alternative career. And by no means are you an alternative. You are just choosing a path that works the best for your life and your skills. And so hearing dozens of people say, you're not alone, leaving academia is hard, it's not failing, but it's not quitting either. You are just doing your thing. It was wonderful for me to read because I selfishly made this resource for myself.
Yeah, you felt seen and part of a tribe instead of alone and lost, which is often what happens if you don't start looking on Google and if you don't start trying to find some solid ground to take the next step. And I think you're doing a great job at it. Plus, and that's what I love, you're sharing it with the community, and there's other community aspects to it. Maybe we'll talk about LinkedIn later on, but seriously, it's very inspiring to see that, and I'm the value for the community is clear to me of what you do. Now, um, so you're doing your PhD now, so you're in year 3. You have a little ways to go. You're doing this is and the question I'm going to be asking, the reason I'm going to be asking this question has to do with the fact that often people will you'll ask them, oh, why don't you invest some time in this? Why don't you invest some time in networking? Or you should probably um, take some maybe elective courses to do with career development and career readiness, and they'll say, "Oh, I'm doing my PhD. I have zero time, or it's not mandatory, so I'd rather keep on working on my project." How do you do that, like, time management part of I'm moving my PhD forward, plus I am leading this side project.
Sure, absolutely. So there's how I do it, and then there's the advice I would give, which may or may not be a little bit different. So I have maybe a two or threefold answer. So first, I really think if it's important to you, you will find the time. Um, there are certain things that I sacrifice in order to, add these hours to my schedule. So I think the approach that I take, which is not the approach I'm necessarily recommending, but I work a lot. I just setting myself up for my career post PhD is crucial to me. As I heard it once said that finding a career beyond academia is kind of like a part-time job, and in my case, I've turned it into a full-time job. So I think just accepting that is important. It's going to take time, but it's a worthwhile investment. The second thing is that it helps to block your time, right? So I have days on my calendar that are specifically for PhD work. That's it. There are no meetings, there are no awesome podcasts. It is primarily just experiments. That's it. So all day, multiple days a week, you are really making sure you're making progress on your PhD, because at the end of the day, that is why you're here, and it's important for your career to have this PhD if you decide that for yourself. And then lastly is my advice. So I'm telling you my approach. You can take the advice from that. But my advice is to take it small, one step at a time. All of this for me started with one informational interview, one message on LinkedIn, right? That was it. And then eventually it builds to a second message. It builds to a second conversation. It builds to maybe posting on LinkedIn yourself, right? Or meeting awesome people and having chats with them. So I think if it's important to you, which it should be, then you should find the time. And I hope that I can be a testament to folks, not a cautionary tale, but I can demonstrate that you can do a lot during your PhD and you should prioritize your professional development.
Yeah. No, it makes total sense. And it's funny because I was thinking about it as you were talking, and then you said it blocks your time, and
Mm.
it's exactly where my thinking was going, and to me it connects with something else, which is I wish that part of this work that you're doing on your own, not for your own only, because you're sharing it with the community, but in universities and departments and research centers, etc., are offering some career services, some form of them. Not all universities do it the same way, but they tend to be elective. They tend not to be blocked in your schedule, blocked in your calendar. For the first year of the PhD, you have this much to do to prepare. Of course, it's the first year, so you're kind of this honeymoon period with research, and but some of it, a little bit, would be great. And then second year, focus on, I don't know, networking, and then getting to third, fourth year, maybe converting your CV into a resume thing. Yeah, it should be. I I'd love it. I'd love a world where it was part of what is blocked into your agenda, like you said, and it's still not. So it falls on you, the student, to do it. And what I feel is like in thinking in my case, I was so engrossed. I emigrated from Europe. Was engrossed in troubleshooting in just in the day to day of cell biology and PhD, and I never had the instinct myself or someone, a mentor, tell me, by the way, block some hours a week starting today, day one of your PhD, to start start little by little working on that kind of springboard for the after. And you're doing it, and you have the right instinct. And I think what's inspiring to hear is that, first, it's doable. Not everyone needs to do it the same way, but I really, really believe that to do some form of career preparation work is crucial. And then the thing is, the system itself, the PhD system itself, does not. How can I say? This type of work is not integral to the experience itself. The supervisors don't have training on that. Some of them have never been in another space than academic, so it really falls onto us as
I
graduates.
just want to say, I just want to interrupt and say, I totally agree with you. I think there is limited support in the academic space for doing anything other than the PhD. I know that I've experienced that myself. Stanford is a wonderful place to be. It's very, you know, ingrained in sort of the industry life here in Silicon Valley. And it definitely depends on who your mentor is, right? So students might find a mentor who can advise more in the industry space. Maybe they've been there, or they have partnerships or collaborations. I will say, though, it is quite lonely to go through sort of an experience where you're building stuff outside of your PhD, but you work along people whose only focus is PhD. And so I think finding that community, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's at your university yourself, I just think that is huge. And so that was a big impetus for PhD Pass, was where can I find my community of people who can support me a little bit and I can cheer them on as well, because it can be kind of lonely when you're deciding to do something different, but you're still in the system because you're decided to continue to finish your PhD. So I'm with you. I think the support should be there. But for anybody who's doing it unsupported, just know that you are not alone, and I get where you're coming from.
That's it. And if you're not doing it yet, but you have
Yeah.
this, you're also Googling often, this is the sign for you that you can do it, and that can find a tribe. And we're on LinkedIn. There's a bunch of us, and we're fun and we're nice, and so don't be afraid of jumping in. Now, you were talking about the loneliness of the PhD is kind of a you're in a lab, you're in a team in a certain way, depending on the subjects and also the labs. There's more or less collaborative aspect to it, but you, in this case, in the specific situation of PhD paths, you felt alone as the PhD student who has this interest and who I didn't have a tribe at the time. Um, Now I want to kind of turn things kind of on their head, and think, how does because people may think, oh, she's doing this, and so she's losing focus on her PhD. It's a very easy kind of, not conclusion, but inference to make, and I'm sure it's not the case, but you do need to manage your energy and your motivation when you're doing your PhD. Do you have any reflection on that? Does talking with these people give you motivation, or and energy to push forward, or what's the dynamic on that side, on keeping motivated to go to finish your project, even though maybe you're now having conversations where you think, ooh, tomorrow I could go do this or that, instead of being in the lab.
Absolutely. I think these are all very important questions to ask, and I understand where people are coming from. I think it comes down to a few things. One, I just hope people trust me a little bit, especially, my advisors trust me, my lab community, I hope they trust me. I came here for a reason, right? I came here to complete a job, and in my mind, my PhD is a huge goal that I am nowhere near going to give up on. And so for me, anybody who has that worry, I just ask them to trust me first, right? I worked so hard. I sacrificed so much to get to this point in my career that, oh, I'm ready. I'm excited. I want to crush this PhD, I'm ready to give it my all. And then the second thing is making sure inside that even if I have people who question my ability to continue or my commitment to continuing, that I know why I'm doing this in the first place. And so for me, my PhD has always been a personal goal. It's never really been for a certain career or for a certain person. It's always been for me. And so at the end of the day, if anybody doubts, I know that I'm gonna finish it and I know how committed I am to it. And so also, if I might add, I'm doing science I'm really excited about. And so I've chosen strategically a project that I really want to see through. I work with really wonderful people that I like to spend time with. And on top of that, I'm motivated internally more than I think anybody can ever understand fully except myself. So um, it's a viable question, but I push back and just tell people to trust me. I'm
Oh,
here for a reason.
it's very interesting what you say. I'm actually gonna kind of deposit an idea or a concept that is maybe, again, it's counter to what these people might think, which there's a logic to that, of course. But I would say, and I want your opinion on that. What would you say if I told you, if I defended that? Well, maybe doing this work of meeting, interacting with, seeing the paths of people who did PhDs and who are thriving wherever they are in the job market, in industry, in government, whatever, isn't it inspiring to you to actually finish and also be one of these people?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, absolutely. So there have also been quite a few people that I have spoken to throughout this whole journey that have explicitly told me, keep going, get the PhD. Like it'll be so great for your career. And also, when I think about the community I'm trying to build, which is a community of PhDs who have gone on to have careers outside of academia, and then I get to be one of those people who has a PhD and has a career outside of academia. It's beautiful. And I think I can also better help folks by having that experience. And so it's all connected. And also meeting all of these people and hearing their experiences through graduate school makes me a better graduate student, by me feeling not alone and feeling inspired and feeling motivated and hopeful. I keep going even more than I would if I didn't have that community. So I think investing in the community, whether you're a graduate student just starting off or you're about to finish, it's never too early. And I'd say it's never too late either. Just get started as soon as possible. And I think it makes you a better PhD for it. So yes to your question. Yeah, we're on the same page.
Yeah, and when you talk about the community, so if people go to the PhD Paths website, phdpaths.co, do they find, what do they find in there in terms of getting in touch with the community? Is it there, or is this kind of the LinkedIn aspect that you're mentioning?
Yeah, so on the PhD Pass website, it's the portfolio I mentioned, which is that big
Okay,
Google sheet with all the information and people's contact information. Then there is the profiles, which is every single interview that I have. So there should be about 115 on there right now, and that's growing by the day. And then next is the Pathfinder section, which has a bunch of resources that I've either created or that I'm linking to, like the newsletter that you have provided the link to. The community, I probably need to put that on the website, but the community is on LinkedIn right now. So it's actually called PhD Pathfinders, right? Because we're all trying to find our path. And so that is something that recently started, just has not made its way to the website yet. But this is an incredible community where people can come and get any of their questions answered or just come to make friends and get to know people. not only is it a good networking space, but also a place for support and celebration. So we have a bunch of career coaches in there. We have a bunch of industry PhDs in there too. And then we have fellow students and postdocs who are going through the same journey. And so the whole goal is that you realize you want to leave academia. Maybe you have a little bit of a crisis, and then you come and not only get advice from trained professionals, you get advice from people who have done the transition themselves, and then you get support from people who are on the exact same journey as you. And that's the PhD Pathfinders on LinkedIn.
Yeah, amazing. So all of those links, of course, I'll share them in the show notes, and I hope people listening join, because it is a big plus. Now, the other thing, from what you were saying, that that I think is interesting for people who think, the only time I have is for my research, my experiments, my PhD, and I'm always talking about it in terms of where the domain I was in, which was very much, lab intensive, and very, very, kind of voracious of my time in a certain way. But what I want people who are listening to kind of interiorize, to kind of consider, is that this time that you're, let's say, stealing from your PhD, from your experiments, to do something else, if you invest it in, doing your own research, your own, someone I interviewed said she would look at job postings, and then she would kind of create and maintain what she called a job posting scrapbook. Could be, for in personal terms, it could be something like that. Someone else, and I mentioned it to you before the interview, Adriana Bankson, one of the early guests of the show, and she's already been a second time on the show too. For her, kind of the key moment of feeling that, okay, I'm doing this PhD and there's going to be something great after, was when she and colleagues of hers, as biochemistry young researchers, started in graduate school a seminar series where they would invite alumni. And again, yes, it's time, yes, it's logistics, you need to organize, but the return on investment is so huge that I would say you're not stealing money, you're actually investing in being ready, okay, for your career. But I would say if you increase and nurture your network and your knowledge of the job market, etc., you're also becoming a better researcher, a better academic eventually, depending on whichever path you follow. What do you think about this?
I totally agree. I think I see it from a personal perspective and then a career perspective. So from a personal perspective, I've always found that having multiple spaces to use my brain makes my brain work better in certain spaces, right? So in college, I double majored so that I would have a variety of academic experiences. So learning about social psychology was a break from cellular biology, right? So I think having that variety has just always been better for me personally, and I think the same goes for the PhD. So talking to somebody about careers beyond academia and then going and running mouse behavioral experiments, it's a nice, there's some variation there that I think makes me a better researcher. And then the next is, this is a huge time in our life, graduate school, right? Many people are here for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and most of the time it's all of our 20s. And so to think that we should not be spending any time in graduate school preparing for a career is just setting us up for not the greatest time, Like, that's when a lot of people start families or try to buy a home or they move locations, right? And so I think spending time within graduate school to find what you want to do after is not only crucial for the success of you personally, but it's also crucial for the success, I think, of your research and, potentially your loved ones in the future. I just think it's a worthwhile bit of your time. So, however, I don't know if I have the greatest advice because I do a lot of my work at like 5:30 in the morning and 7 p.m. at night. So I think there are times when sometimes research will take more of the forefront. Sometimes your outside endeavors will take more time. Just making sure that you're making progress on as much as possible, taking it one step at a time, just one day at a time. Um, that's what matters. But I agree with you. Yes, I agree with everything you say.
Yeah, and I just try to keep saying it, um, to so the people allow themselves to consider doing something
Hmm.
on that side, and then, well, it's true that depending on where you are institutionally, or in terms of your supervisor, some people actually feel conflicted about not only doing these things but revealing that they're doing them. So of course that's always something to consider. You don't want to be in conflict with your with your supervisor, etc. But I would say, if you're in a place with a good culture, I think whoever is above you or responsible for you should be supportive of you trying to become a better professional, or to improve the the outcomes of your career search that'll come right after you get your degree, be it academic or not.
Absolutely. And I think it reflects really well on the mentor too, if you have students that are not only productive, but they go on to have really wonderful, fulfilling careers. And for the students who feel like they don't have time, I will just say that you really can start small. So let's say every week you walk to go get a coffee just because you need a little bit of lab break. Maybe when you walk, you have a phone call with somebody that you're interested in their career, or maybe you go get coffee with somebody instead, or maybe on the weekends you go for hikes, but maybe this time you just add a person you haven't met before and instead make it a walk, right? So I think there are plenty of ways that, if you're scrolling social media, maybe pause and scroll on LinkedIn and meet somebody new. So I think that there are plenty of ways you can bring it into your life that doesn't detract from your research. And I've found that both can coexist and they can coexist really well.
Yeah. Yeah, and the community does exist. There's a PhD pathfinders on LinkedIn, but the there's people out there wherever you are geographically. There's people around you that have been through this adventure of the PhD and the post PhD, that are eager to, if you ask, to share their story and their insights. And you've seen this, I'm sure during your interviews. So don't hesitate to reach out. Maybe just, if you're shy, follow them first, see what they're publishing about. I would say being in a group like PhD Pathfinders is very helpful, because then things are happening in the group, and you can just crawl and see what's happening, and eventually, once you feel comfortable, you can share. So there's no difficulty, or there's nothing menacing there. So the barrier to entry and to actually starting to do something positive is very low. Um, but I have a question for you about the interviews, and I'd really love to know whether there's one, like, anyway, of course I'm going to ask one, but there's a story, a path, a journey that really surprised you. Someone's path that you're like, oh my goodness, like, how did you kind of start here, then go there, and this is amazing. I would have never imagined it.
That is a really good question. I think, to be completely honest with you, almost all of them have surprised me because in learning about things you can do with your PhD, I think seeing people do them is already a surprise in and of itself. You're like, I had no idea that you could be uh, a consultant, right? Or you're a founder, or you did a postdoc, and then you got really into community engagement and now you run part of a nonprofit to help science become more accessible, right? Or oh gosh, I'm trying to think, or you're an author on top of that, right? And I think the thing that speaks to me the most that I found really cool is how many people have gone on to be founders and CEOs, people who didn't feel like the position that they were looking for necessarily existed. And so they created it themselves. And those stories always, uh, surprise me or inspire me, whatever is the best word, because that's something I'm trying to do myself. So, um, Yeah, hopefully that kind of gives you some insight. It's not as specific, but
No, it's
those
fine,
are
and
to go.
but it is representative of what the journey means, and the whole difficulty and the reason why we're talking here today is because, you know, whereas, someone who comes out with a degree in law, someone who comes out with a degree in engineering, the job market pretty much knows how to hire them
Yeah.
and why, and what are the metrics, and then what the mission is. PhD, although it's one term and it has three letters, it's a myriad. It can take a myriad of forms depending on the domain, the type of research. Is it social sciences, or is it like hard science? Is it? It's really a very fuzzy thing to deal with. If you want to generalize, you can't generalize. So it's not surprising to me that you end up having these kind of billiard ball career journeys where it hits one and then it falls into the corner pocket, and you're like, how did you get there? It was like, well, this conversation, that conference, this idea of something that didn't exist that I created. But the cool thing is that then we do create it and we do navigate that, and then people who are out there are actually having fulfilling careers. And that's one of the fears. Actually, I wonder what you feel about that, and whether, and I kind of imagine your answer, but have you heard this idea of, if I go out, if I go to industry, I'm not going to be intellectually stimulated. It's going to be selling something. And I'm sure you have different examples of how people outside the walls of university are finding really cool challenges to take on, and very stimulating and even scientific, goals to attain.
Absolutely. I will answer your question, but you saying all of that reminded me of what actually surprised me. So I have to hop back.
Go
Mark
do. Yep.
Marketing. There are so many PhDs who are doing marketing research. That surprised me beyond compare because, I mean, marketing is data, right? It's trends, it's understanding behavior, it's taking insights and turning them into impact. So anyway, marketing was my biggest surprise. So if
Yeah.
anybody's interested in data analytics or sort of stuff like that,
Data
look into
science.
marketing.
Yeah.
But you're totally right about maybe some concerns with hopping to industry. So admittedly, in the PhD Pass database, I only ask, why did you leave academia? I didn't ask, why are you afraid to go to industry? But I will say one of the biggest reasons why people decided to go to industry is because they're actually looking to have more impact. I had never heard anybody in all of my interviews say that they're worried about being intellectually stimulated. And I think that that's really telling about what there is in industry that, what industry offers. So a lot of the reasons why folks decided to leave academia were for cultural reasons, which I'm sure is not super surprising to many people. Some of the work-life balance and publishing pressures, but also for many other reasons, like the impact they wanted to have on society and the translational aspect of helping humans with their world problems. And also things like higher pay or geographical movement abilities, and then also job security. So now, nobody I interviewed said anything about not feeling like they could be stimulated. And from what I know from the jobs that people have taken, there's a lot of intellectual stimulation that's happening outside of industry. People are doing incredible things. So, um, yeah, I wouldn't worry that you will not be, you won't have your brain stimulated in some way.
It's just the subject, the subjects are not the same. The time span that is given to you to follow something, let's say in R&D,
Sure.
is not the same either. So it's going to be shorter. You're gonna, you're gonna have to drop some projects on the, on the in the wastebasket if they don't work after a certain time. So that's very different. It's a very, like you said, it's culture. It's very different compared to how academia is set up, but also the mandate of academia and of academic research. It's very particular. But yeah, the challenges are out there, and you just need to look out in your community and turn on the news, and you'll see that there's stuff out there that's complicated, that as a community we're not being able to find solutions for. And when you find something like that, it's probably something where someone with a profile like yours, someone who's done this long project, deep research, data crunching, and also discovering novel things that need to be yeah, I just said it, but need to be an innovation in whichever domain you're in. When society is facing problems that we're not finding great solutions to, it's exactly that. And I think the researcher profile really fits that very well.
Absolutely. There are definitely mindset shifts that need to happen when you go to industry. There are different goals in industry than there are in academia. They're two different systems, right? But the PhD skill set and the PhD knowledge and expertise can help companies and can help the world solve their tougher problems.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And so I think seeing not only you personally seeing the amount of skills that you have beyond your hard technical skills, right? The soft skills too, like presentation capabilities, project management, teamwork, collaboration, leadership. These are all things that are really, really valuable in an industry setting. And then also having the industry setting understand that PhDs are awesome. We're really committed and resilient, and we really like hard problems and tackling them to the best of our ability. And so I think those parties can benefit from having one another in their lives. And so um, I just, I think, yeah, there is probably a little bit of a mindset shift that needs to happen on the PhD's end when they go. But I think it can be quite beneficial and have a lot of impact.
Yeah, yeah. No, on the industry side too, there's, because of this fuzziness of what's a PhD, there's also some like preconceived ideas there that, anyway, whenever we can, whenever we're at the table or in an elevator with someone, it's also on us a little bit to kind of demystify it and show we're just humans. We kind of have these kind of kinks of really liking one subject and digging deep into it. But we're teamwork. We're team workers. We are not. We are not. We don't have our noses in our books all the time. And we're inventive, and we're creative, and that's the part that I think is hard to sometimes get. If you ask someone on the street, what do you think a PhD student or a researcher is in adjectives? I think creative and inventive. Inventive maybe, but creative, I think, is something that's going to come up a lot. And like I said, difficult, like I said, but in a different way. Difficult problems require creativity to be solved. Because if a lot of people have been trying for a while and haven't been able to, there needs to be kind of something different, something new. Anyway, still on these interviews, and we're getting to the end of this conversation, but you mentioned that from the interviews you've kind of gleaned some kind of mentorship. It's like if you have kind of this hive mind that somehow is giving you these pearls of mentorship. Is there a couple of them that stand out that you could share with the audience? And think about the audience as someone. Whenever someone shared that with you and you were, aha, think that they're in that moment of not knowing that. And yeah, it'd be great if you could share like something that's been really either transformational for the person or for you, but that was really surprising, and that you saw the value of right away, in
Sure.
terms of, okay, now this I'm sure I'm going to apply because it's really great advice.
Absolutely. If you're okay, maybe I'll provide a couple pieces of advice.
Sure.
The biggest piece of advice by far was to network. So many people either found their job or got connected with somebody who then got them a job through personal networking or
Mm.
LinkedIn. So that is less of like an emotional piece of advice and more just practical. Networking is huge and it can be very daunting, but it can be very easy if you just start small and take small steps. So pretty much everybody recommended to network. And then from an emotional point, I think hearing everybody say it's okay, right? That they made this decision for a certain reason and that they're happy and they like the career that they've pursued, that for me was the most important was these people are not quitting. These people are not failing. They're not a failure for leaving academia. They're leaving for really good reasons, and a lot of them are just called to other careers, and this should be celebrated. We should be really excited for these people. And so somebody once said, "Your life is not a ladder, or your career is not a ladder, it's an exploration." And so you do not need to go in one direction, up, 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 up. Take a detour or pivot a little bit or go explore something else. There's no need to be stuck in a system that you're not um, super excited about, and you're very welcome to try new things. So for me, the most heartwarming bit was you have a lot of wonderful skills. Go take them to industry, go do some really cool things, and do what makes you happy. Choose your career for you, not for somebody else.
Yeah. No, it's true. And it's interesting the latter kind of
Mm.
metaphor. And it's true that in the past, let's say our parents, grandparents, careers were very much ladders, and then there was not much mobility, etc., etc. But today, well, and let's say in academia, if you're following the academic track, there's some ladder aspect to it because there's rungs that you need to go through to then eventually get tenure, etc. But in the job market, and I would say probably in the profiles of academics have also changed in the past years, but it's much more a patchwork. It's much more, like you said, an exploration, and it's much more of a creative. Again, I'm coming with creative, but a creative process than a linear thing, and that's why not considering that a kind of, let's say, a 90-degree turn is a failure because you thought you were going to go on this line, and now you're actually kind of turning, is important. And a lot of people, until they find their tribe and what they find this career that fulfills them, they do fall into this kind of group of people who are kind of bitter at the experience. They maybe feel like, well, for one, they failed at becoming a professor, which probably was part of what they wanted to do at the beginning. But also they feel bitter at maybe kind of feeling forced to leave a tribe they thought they were part of, which is academia. That's another one that I've heard too. And I think it's tragic because it kind of means that somehow, somewhere in their heart of hearts, they're kind of feeling that they kind of they wasted these years, and like you said, it could be up to 6 years. It's a big chunk of your young life, and I think it's unfair and it's tragic. And I think conversations like this have the potential to get people to say, no, wait, okay, this is not a failure; it's a reorientation. It's like when you're driving and then your GPS is telling you to go this way, and you say, you know what, today I'm going to take this route, and then you turn and it says recalculating route. You're just recalculating. It's not a failure. You're going to get to there. You're going to get to where you were going, just through a different path. And that's, yeah, I love it. I love it that's the way you see it. I love it that's the way you're also, you know, you're also jumping into this exercise of doing this exploration, because it means that you're not including, or you're not, including kind of biases of wrong, right, when people come and interview with you. Anything is right.
I will say too, sometimes you take a detour when you're driving and you end up finding a really beautiful place. Maybe it's a new trail, or it's a beautiful outlook, or it's a new coffee shop. So you might have this idea of where you're headed. You might have a destination. Your GPS might keep telling you to recalibrate your route, and in reality, you've found a new path that fits better with your life and your career. And that is life, right? I think a lot of times people might separate career and life. They have their career goals and they just expect their life to follow. So in reality, I like to flip that. Let's put our life goals up front and let's find a career that fits that as much as possible. Because at the end of the day, it's the life you're living, not the career you're living. And so I think those detours are beautiful. We should welcome them. It's easier said than done, but trying to celebrate those opportunities as much as possible is part of life, right?
That's it. And there's no better way of finding what detour you'd like to do than to learning it from people who've done something similar before. And that's why I think what you've done is, and what you're doing is a great project. I'm sure it's going to help you a bunch, but also everyone else who's now still in graduate school finishing, or maybe having recently finished. You're going to be able to find inspiration there. You're going to be able to find also, how can I say, to find the word that comes is community, but it's too vague. To see yourself in other people's paths, and often it's kind of anxious. It's you feel anxious when you cannot picture yourself in 1 year or in 6 months or whatever. And by having kind of an approximation, which is someone who's already done it in their way, it can help you and it can comfort you and it can give you hope, hope and confidence that you're actually doing the right thing and that there's actually a path for you. Ashley, I think it's clear that I really appreciate what you're doing. But if people who are listening, people who are watching, want to dig a little bit more, or just thank you for what you do, what's the best way for them to reach out to you? Of course, for people watching, I have the Substack newsletter, phdpaths.substack.com, here cycling on the screen. Just the website is phdpaths.co if you want to go find about all that Ashley has talked about. But if people want to reach out to you and talk a little more, what's the best way for them to do it?
Sure. The best way to do that is LinkedIn. So I will make sure to give you the link to my profile so you can include that in the show notes or wherever you provide all of your links. That is the best way. That's also the way to find the community as well as through LinkedIn. And then that's also where you can find the link to the website and the link to the newsletter. So try to keep everything in one place. And that's also a great place to meet other folks who are helping and working on this community.
Okay. Now, somehow your mic decided to go back onto your thing.
Oh,
Can you just, yeah. As you were saying, like, it's like, if you want, I can re-ask the question, and then, or you know what it is. I'm just asking for your contact. So, yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yep. The best place to find me is LinkedIn. That is where I keep everything. So the website, the newsletter, the community is there as well. And so I can provide you the link to my profile. Hopefully you can include in the show notes or wherever you keep the links. LinkedIn's also a fantastic place to meet other people who are helping with this cause that we are on. So I hope to connect there.
Yeah. Please do reach out, and please do go on LinkedIn. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile there yet, and if you think it's just for people who are in business or industry and wear ties, it's not it at all. It's a very dynamic community. There's a lot of scientists, academics in there, and plus the people who have had careers, academic careers and are now in industry, they're all there too. So in that respect, I think it's clear why you should be on there. And if you're on there, if you want to do, because one of the take homes for me from all that you've shared, Ashley, from your journey to here, to your PhD and to PhD paths, one thing that I think is very important is you started with something small, which was a Google search that was then happening again and again. And not everyone needs to start a seminar series, start a community, but I would love that everyone who's now listening or watching and has not yet invested in their career readiness, for after graduate school, that they add one little thing. They block one little like Google Calendar slot per week, let's say first, and that they start building a habit like that and eventually grow it, be it more hours or more days, because you can't imagine the potential that this has to bring you kind of peace in terms of considering what your career is going to look like, instead of being in a place of unrest and of not knowing, which is stressful. So start little. And then another very little thing, go on LinkedIn, find PhD pathfinders, add yourself into the group, even if you're introverted, if you feel like, oh, what am I going to say? You don't need to say anything. Just be there and see what conversations are happening. And you'll see there's going to be a moment where there's going to be someone saying something that'll have you like, oh, I have an answer for this, or, oh, this was really good. And then that's the beginning of it. And then it can snowball from there. So, yeah, Ashley, this has been a great conversation. Thanks again for taking a little bit of the precious time that you have to be with me here today. And again, I'm super happy that we crossed paths, and I'm again thankful in the name of the community for what you do, and super thankful that you're now part of it, and that we can all now kind of around this subject, which is very niche, find community, find solace, and find inspiration. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the work that you do.